Hi, my name is Jennifer Pottorff, and I looked at the effectiveness of cross-curricular subjects on student achievement in 6th grade math scores. I'm doing this with the Department of Education at Morningside University. I'm currently going to be a teacher at Dakota Valley Middle Schools, but the study was completed at the District of Sioux City. So cross-curricular learning. When I think of cross-curricular learning, I think of students being able to relate content across all subjects. But students are used to going to one class, learning about one subject, then moving on to the next subject and not linking the content together. So why did I choose this problem? Our school, we had a group of teachers that were selected to participate in a study that's called Future Ready. We were able to choose any topic that we wanted to implement in our classrooms, and the district provided us funding to plan time and resources for this. So the group of teachers and I decided that we wanted to look at interdisciplinary teaching and the cross-curricular learning because some of the teachers had implemented it before and had great success, so we wanted to try it again. The impact of low achievement on middle school students. Rockoff and Lockwood in 2010 completed a study comparing students who attended 6th grade in a middle school setting compared to those in an elementary school. 6th grade students who attended in a middle school had a negative 0.1 standard deviation in math and English language arts, whereas the 6th grade students who attended in an elementary school had a positive standard deviation of 0.1, also in English language arts and math. According to Steinberg and McCrae in 2012, student disengagement will cost an average of $260,000 in earning potential later in life. Problem-based learning. A link has been shown to improvements in student learning. Swan, Vehi, Van Hoff, Kredkowski, and Rafanon, 2013, looked at problem-based learning in middle schools. The study came from a school data literacy unit in which there were open-ended questions, collaborative learning, and student-centered learning. When given pre- and post-tests, the school without problem-based learning had an average growth of 3%, whereas the school that focused on problem-based learning had an average increase of 57%. Interdisciplinary teaching. Reed and Groth in 2009 mentioned that a goal of the education department should be to create higher achievement in low-performing schools. This study set up an interdisciplinary team that sets a unit theme and then relates that material from each core subject back to the theme. The overall results included that higher performance could be achieved by more active classrooms. The impact of cross-curricular learning. According to Schulte, Antila, Webster, and Hasman, 2018, teaching themes across many disciplines has increased student motivation. Gardner, Tushman, and Hawkins in 2010 also agree that there's a higher student motivation with cross-curricular learning because it leads to students' self-determination. The boundaries between content areas need to be eliminated. So my purpose statement for this research was, do 6th grade math students who participate in cross-curricular learning score higher than 6th grade math students who do not participate in cross-curricular learning as measured by the District Common Assessment? So the participants in this study were 6th grade students that were broken into two groups. The special education students were only in the experimental group. So if a student had an individualized education plan, they were automatically placed in the experimental group based on how our classrooms were set up. Both the experimental and the control group had varying social economic status and racial backgrounds. There was a total of 54 students in this study, and those were broken into two classes. So each group, the control group and the experimental group, had 5 50-minute classes a week, once a day. Experimental group was set up different than the control group. The experimental group had 3 teachers placed in the room: the general education math teacher, the special education teacher, and also a math interventionist. The control group just had a math teacher. The experimental group typically set up their classroom where they came in, they wrote down their learning target, they had a bell ringer, they had a bell ringer discussion, they had guided instruction, which could include group work with other students in the class. It can be the teacher leading it. It could be hands-on learning, depending on what the content was. And then they would have work time. The control group had the bell ringer discussion, guided instruction, which was basically set and get from the teacher. The teacher led it and the students just took the notes on it. And then they were provided work time. The experimental group had more hands-on learning and more group work, where control group was teacher-led and independent work. The experimental group changed the order of the curriculum and started with Chapter 10. So our whole goal was to match our curriculum to the science so we could relate it to that cross-curricular. So we had to redo our curriculum to match the science class to tie things with them. The control group started with Chapter 1 and worked straight through the textbook all the way through Chapter 10. So data analysis. First, I was going to look at the Brigance placement test to determine grade level equivalence of students. I still use that information, but the majority of the information came from our District Common Assessment number 13. The District Common Assessment is given to all 6th grade students across the middle school, no matter if they are in an accelerated math class or in the general education math class. Students took a total of 16 different District Common Assessments throughout the year. I only looked at District Common Assessment number 13 for this study. So this is an example of the Brigance placement test that students are given multiple times throughout the year. We like to use this test to determine grade level equivalence of our students. So as you can see in the top left corner, it starts out fairly simple and basic with basic adding and subtracting problems. As you go down the page, you get into multiplication and division and into some fractions, into some money, and then by the end, you're multiplying fractions, you're converting, and you're adding fractions. So we take this information and we look at how many questions the students got right, and it gives us a grade level equivalence. So this is the chart we use. So if the students got 10 questions correct, if you follow across there, it tells us it's a 3.5, which means it was a 3rd grade, 5th month of the 3rd grade is their grade level. So these students take this test multiple times throughout the year so we can compare their growth. The District Common Assessment that we used to get the results for this study was this. So the first 3 questions are shown here. As you can see, it tells the students that they are looking at the surface area of rectangular prisms, and each question is worth 2 points, and they had to show their work. So the first 2 questions included the picture for the students, and then the third one was a word problem. Questions 4 and 5, we were looking at surface area using nets. So looking at the figures unfolded, can you find the surface area of them? So again, each question was 2 points and they had to show their work. Notice question number 5 included a triangular prism. This is the only way they had to be assessed for a triangular prism was with using a net. Volume of rectangular prisms were the last 3 questions on the test. Again, 2 points each and they had to show their work. You will notice this time all students were also given the formula for volume of a rectangular prism as long as they knew what the L, W, and H stood for. Again, the students had 2 questions with the picture and 1 with the word problem. So this total assessment was worth 16 points, 2 points per question. The results of this study. There was a statistically significant increase in student comprehension scores as a result of the District Common Assessment. T of 52 equals 2.988 and a p-value of 0.004. The experimental group had a total of 31 participants. The control group had 23 participants. The experimental group ended with an average score of 91.290. The control group ended with an average of 80.435 on the District Common Assessment 13. Some limitations to this study. The sample size was only 54 students. Although only 54 students participated and we looked at the results of those students, there were more students that participated in the cross-curricular learning. As I stated before, there was a total of 6 teachers that were doing cross-curricular learning. We had a total, an additional 5 classes that were cross-curricular learning, and we had an additional 3 classes that were traditional, not counting those that were in the accelerated class, which was 2. So really we had an additional 5 that were cross-curricular and an additional 5 that were traditional. We only looked at low-level learners. Because our school placed all students that are identified as talented and gifted in an accelerated math class, those students were not able to participate as they have more curriculum to get through in a different class. So they were not included in the study. Again, the number of teachers, as I stated before, the experimental group had 3 teachers in the classroom. That was just how it was made up. We had to have the special education teacher in there, and then the math interventionist, who was myself, was assigned to that classroom at that time as well. So we had 3 teachers in there where the control group only had 1. Teacher background and training. The experimental group had 3 teachers that were certified in math. The special education teacher, the general ed math teacher, and the math interventionist. We were all certified in math. The control group, the main focus of his content is science, but he was selected to teach a 6th grade math class that year. So he's taught math before, but not his forte. Also, it was a brand new curriculum this year, and so the math teachers were provided training on the textbook and the resources provided with the textbook. The science teacher did not receive that training as he is certified for science. The assessments were given at different times of the year. Because the experimental group took the material out of order, the tests were not given at the same time. The tests were given after the content was taught, so they were given at different times throughout the year. Some suggestions for future research. Studies of the impact of cross-curricular learning at all grade levels. This study just focused on 6th grade, so what would it look like for 7th and 8th grade? Study cross-curricular learning with the talented and gifted students. As I mentioned before, the study did not include them because of how our classrooms were set up, but it would be interesting to see the results with those students placed in it. And again, having teachers who are certified in that subject teaching the course. Yes, our teacher was certified in teaching math, but it was not his forte. Implications on teachers and students. This research study provides evidence to show teachers how important it is to make learning relatable to the students. Make hands-on learning more important to students and more applicable, and not just sit and get from the teacher. And there are a copy of my references.